The first time Silas Jennings heard about the crystal maze, he was in the middle of tightening a bolt on a badly rattling centrifuge in the lower decks of the Virely Institute's spaceborne research station. The bolt slipped, his wrench slammed into the housing, and he let out a muffled curse. "You are summoned," a flat voice announced behind him. Silas turned, still holding his bleeding knuckle. Standing in the doorway was an Eltari student named Vec. Vec was tall, slate-gray, with a pair of luminous blue eyes and a permanent expression that Silas had come to interpret as mild confusion, though he suspected it might just be Vec's default face. "Summoned by who?" Silas asked. "Dean Hars. It is urgent," Vec said. "It concerns the maze," Silas blinked. "The what?" "The crystal maze. You are to attend immediately." He stared at Vec a moment longer, then wiped his hand on a rag. "Fine, lead the way." The walk to the dean's chamber took 9 minutes, Silas counted. The station was enormous, a rotating cylinder hosting the Eltari's most elite interspecies education program. Silas was the only human in the current cycle, a token of goodwill from Earth's United Diplomatic Corps. He wasn't a diplomat, though. He was a technician. A good one. And very deliberately not the polished type of human the Eltari usually invited to their academies. The dean's chamber was cool and circular, ringed with crystalline panels that shimmered faintly in reaction to the occupants' moods. Dean Hars loomed in the center, flanked by 2 other students, both Eltari, both watching Silas with barely concealed amusement. "Silas Jennings," the dean said. His voice was smooth, almost melodic. "We have a matter of some academic tension." "Let me guess," Silas said, scratching the side of his head. "Something broke and you think I broke it." "No, worse," Hars replied. "There is a growing sentiment among our students, a hypothesis, one I find unproductive." Silas folded his arms. "And they believe your species incapable of solving the crystal maze." Silas blinked. "The what again?" "The crystal maze," Hars repeated. "A spatial intelligence examination. Constructed generations ago by the Pharaxy, it is considered unsolvable by species with linear cognition." "You understand why this concerns your presence here." "I'm not even a student," Silas said. "I fix machines." "You are human," Hars said. "That is enough." One of the other students, a younger Eltari with an almost metallic sheen to his skin, leaned forward. "Your kind rely on instinct and repetition. The maze defeats both. Its architecture shifts. Its principles are non-Euclidean. You will be lost in seconds." Silas turned to him. "And you've solved it?" "No," the student said, "but I understand it. That is sufficient." Silas looked back to Hars. "This is political, isn't it?" Hars inclined his head. "Of course, should you attempt and fail, it will validate their assumptions. Should you refuse, they will claim fear. Should you succeed—" Silas lifted a hand. "Got it." He took a breath, looked at the floor, then back up. "Fine. I'll try it, but I want a full scan of the maze conditions," he said. "And I'm not doing it just to prove something to a bunch of smug aliens." Hars smiled faintly. "Agreed." The maze chamber was located in the outer arc of the station, inside a sealed dome of translucent alloy. It shimmered like quartz under the artificial sun. 8 viewing platforms floated above the dome, each filled with students from a dozen planets. Silas stood alone on the central platform, wearing a light exosuit for atmospheric adaptation. A female technician named Eltari approached. She was from a race called the myelin, hairless, with soft folds along her neck that pulsed gently with bioluminescence. "Have you been briefed?" she asked. "Not really," Silas said. "I know it shifts, I know it's not fair, and I know everyone expects me to fail." She looked at him with something like sympathy. "The maze adapts to the mind inside it. It learns patterns and counters them." "Neat," Silas muttered. "Can I use mapping equipment?" "No devices allowed." "Only your suit. Internal memory only," he frowned. "So I've got to remember everything myself." "Yes, but you may exit at any time." "Right." He flexed his fingers. "And if I don't, we extract you after 3 hours, or if your vitals destabilize." Silas gave her a half shrug. "Seems fair." The door to the maze opened with a low hum. Cool air drifted out, tinged with something like mint and ozone. Silas stepped forward. The interior was a riot of angles. Crystal walls stretched into infinity, refracting light into patterns that hummed and shifted. The floor was tiled in hexagonal plates, some of which moved underfoot. No visible ceiling. No visible path. He stepped onto the first tile. It responded with a soft glow, another step. The wall to his left shimmered, then rippled like water, revealing a corridor that hadn't been there before. Silas turned toward it, stepped in, and the entrance vanished behind him. "Great," he muttered. "One-way trip." He walked slowly, tapping each tile with his boot before stepping. The walls seemed to breathe. He made a mental note of the curve of the corridor, the way the light bent near certain corners. Every 10 meters he paused and glanced back, watching for changes. After 15 minutes he encountered the first junction. 3 paths, no markings. He knelt and studied the floor. The tiles were subtly different, pressure sensitive, maybe? He pressed one with his palm, a faint vibration. He took the center path, the maze narrowed. The walls curved inward and the lighting dimmed. Then the temperature dropped. His suit adjusted, but his breath still fogged. He kept moving, counting steps, mapping angles in his head. At minute 30, he hit a dead end. "Of course," he muttered, turning to retrace, but the corridor had changed. The floor was now a slope. The walls had shifted hue. He crouched, drew a crude diagram in the condensation on his wrist panel, and began backtracking the new route. Above the dome, the students stirred. Vec leaned forward, watching Silas move with careful deliberation. "He is not panicking," he said. "He is human," Hars replied. "They panic later." Inside the maze, Silas reached the second junction. This time he sat down, he closed his eyes. In his head he began reconstructing the layout. Every turn. Every texture. He assigned numbers, built a grid. When he opened his eyes, he turned left. The left path led to a chamber with floating platforms. He stared at them, then jumped. The first held. The second tilted. He hopped quickly, relying on balance and instinct. At the far end, a crystal panel lit up. A symbol appeared, 3 interlocked rings. He touched it. The walls around him changed again. But Silas had marked the sequence. He recognized the pattern. He kept moving. After an hour and 20 minutes, Silas stood at the maze heart. A central prism hovered in place, pulsing slowly. He reached up and touched it. Nothing happened. He frowned, then stepped back. The floor spiraled downward. A ramp emerged beneath him. He walked it slowly, eyes darting across the walls. He was mapping it as fast as it changed. By hour 2, he had memorized every turn, every permutation. He moved with eerie confidence. The maze shifted, but it couldn't outpace him. He anticipated the changes. When he reached the entrance again, the door opened. He stepped out. Eltari was waiting, eyes wide. "You mapped it," she said. "Every turn," Silas said, panting slightly. "It loops, but not randomly. It reacts to logic, not emotion." Eltari stared. "No one has ever—" "I didn't solve it," Silas said. "I just understood it." Above them, the viewing platforms were silent. Dean Hars descended slowly from his platform. "You were supposed to be a technician," he said. "I still am," Silas replied. "I just did maintenance on your fancy puzzle." Hars studied him. "What did you gain from this?" "A headache," Silas said. "And 37 mental maps I'll forget in a week." Later, back at his bunk, Silas lay on his back staring at the ceiling. His muscles ached and his head throbbed. But he was smiling faintly. He'd walked into a trap designed to make him fail, and he'd walked out. 2 days after the maze, Silas was back in the mechanical bay, head down inside a cracked coolant manifold, welding rig humming in one hand. His knuckles were still raw from the impact with the centrifuge casing, and his right shoulder twinged whenever he lifted it past chest height. Everything else, brain, muscles, patience, was sore in ways that didn't show. A shadow fell across the open panel. He didn't bother looking up. "If you're here to ask for a tour of my brain, get in line behind the 6 people who think I cheated and the one who asked if I was genetically altered." The voice was dry, clipped. "I'm here to give you a physical." Silas slid out from under the manifold and blinked at the figure in front of him. She was shorter than most of the Eltari, with skin that shimmered in dark bronze tones and a faint bioluminescent ring circling each eye. Her lab coat was stiff, with a dense collar that rose like a folded wing. "You don't look like a medic," he said, sitting up. "I'm not," she replied. "I'm a xenobiology adjunct on rotation. The physicians are backed up with 24 cases of tactile hallucinosis from a failed neural interface display. You're the lowest priority living anomaly, so you get me." She tapped a tablet. "You're Silas Jennings, human male, 32. No prior neurological incidents, no history of spatial disorientation, pattern delusions, or dissociative fugues." "That's all technically true," Silas said, "depending on how you define incident." She didn't smile. "You spent 2 hours and 42 minutes inside an adaptive cognitive structure designed to destabilize conscious mapping strategies. You exited without disorientation, nausea, or signs of memory bleed. That's not standard." He gave her a look. "You think I fried something in there? I think your hippocampal and parietal lobe functions are worth a scan. Please come with me." He resisted the urge to groan and stood, brushing a layer of carbon dust off his coveralls. "What's your name, doctor?" Revek, he said, following her down the corridor. "Do you always talk like you're filing a report while sleep-deprived?" "Yes," she said without looking back. The medical wing was warmer than the rest of the station, with a faint thrum that made Silas's teeth buzz. Revek led him into a compact diagnostic bay, gestured to the reclined scanner chair, and handed him a mouthpiece. He settled in, fitted the bite block, and closed his eyes as the chair reclined. The scanner arm rotated above his head, emitting a soft whine. "Don't move," Revek said. "And don't try to memorize the scan pulses." Silas opened one eye. "That's a thing, your kind is unpredictable." He lay still. After 7 minutes, the scan clicked off. Revek didn't say anything as the chair returned to upright. She reviewed the results on her tablet, fingers tapping rapidly. Her brow furrowed. "Your spatial recall index is 81% above baseline for your species," she said. "Your cortical stress markers are elevated, but not dangerously. Your theta band oscillations are atypical." "Is that a compliment?" "It's a warning sign in most species. In yours, it's ambiguous. Could indicate latent cognitive divergence or caffeine dependency." Silas cracked his neck. "Both are probably accurate." Revek turned the tablet toward him. "This section here, do you see these dense clusters of activity during the maze period?" He squinted. "Looks like a bad weather map. It's abnormal. You weren't just navigating, you were actively restructuring your short-term memory to bypass the maze interference filters." "I didn't know I was doing that," she nodded. "That's what makes it interesting." He leaned back. "So, what's the takeaway? You may have sustained a mild neuroplastic event, temporary most likely, but I recommend observation." "Observation meaning what exactly?" "You'll submit to daily scans for 1 week. And you'll wear a passive monitoring patch." "That's not how I wanted to spend my mornings. Not optional." Later, back in his quarters, Silas peeled the backing off the adhesive patch she'd given him and stuck it to his shoulder. It itched immediately. At mid-cycle, Vec showed up without asking. Silas opened the door and stared at him. "I'm not giving a speech, I'm not doing interviews, and I'm definitely not accepting any weird medals." Vec walked past him into the room and sat cross-legged on the floor. "I don't require your words. I require your presence." "Great," Silas muttered, closing the door. Vec studied him. "The maze is considered a rite of intellectual endurance. Most who attempted exit with reduced confidence." "You exited with increased scrutiny." "I didn't realize I was volunteering for celebrity status." "You were not, but you have become a catalyst. The others are unsettled." Silas sat on the edge of his bunk. "Because I didn't panic." "No," Vec said. "Because you adapted faster than their models predicted. Many are questioning the assumptions built into their species profiling algorithms. You mean the ones that say humans are reckless, short-sighted, and emotionally erratic? Yes. Guess they'll have to update the brochure. Vec tilted his head. I do not understand your tone. It's sarcasm. I will study it later. Silas tossed a pillow at him. You do that. The next day he was summoned again not to the dean but to a forum chamber near the station's center. It was shaped like a spiraled amphitheater, with tiered seating and a central platform surrounded by narrow walkways. 8 species were represented. He saw Vec, Revec, even Salari standing stiffly near a group of Mylan students. A tall being with translucent skin and limbs like braided vines approached him. Its voice echoed softly. You will answer questions. You may decline to elaborate. Silas frowned. What is this, a trial, an inquiry, it said, for the sake of academic integrity? He stepped onto the platform. One by one, representatives asked him questions. Not about the maze layout, but about his internal experience. What did you feel when the paths changed? How did you estimate rotational variance in non-fixed coordinates? Describe the moment you chose to stop and calculate instead of act. Silas answered carefully, only saying what he remembered clearly. He didn't exaggerate, he didn't theorize. When someone from a race called the Ver asked if he had preloaded mental simulations, he laughed. I'm not a chess computer, I just noticed patterns, that's it. A low ripple passed through the chamber. You are misrepresenting your species' capacity, one student accused. Silas stared at them. I'm a mechanic. I've been solving problems since I was 10 and my mother's air recycler blew out during a sandstorm. You think adaptability is evolution's accident? We got that way because things kept trying to kill us, so we learned to see ahead. A pause followed. Revec stood up. Mr. Jennings is correct. His neural scan confirms adaptive memory layering. It is not premeditated, it is reactive. That is what makes it valuable. The being who had welcomed him nodded. Inquiry concluded. Observations recorded. Silas stepped down, his mouth dry. Outside the chamber, Revec caught up to him. You handled that well, she said. I feel like I just sat for a dozen job interviews I didn't apply for. You did. As they walked, Silas glanced sideways. So what now? Revec didn't answer at first. Then, the maze is being reclassified. Not as a test of intelligence, but of neurocognitive resilience. Your participation accelerated that change. He blinked. That's a pretty big deal, yes. Are you going to write a paper about it? I already have, she said. You're the subject, he groaned. Don't worry, she added. I left out the part where you insulted the diagnostic chair. Silas laughed, despite himself. Back in his quarters that night, he lay on the bunk, staring at the ceiling again. The glow strip along the wall flickered something he'd meant to fix for a week. He didn't get up. Instead, he whispered to the patch on his shoulder, Hope you're enjoying the show. It pulsed green once, silently. He closed his eyes. Sleep took a long time coming. By the 4th morning of his observation schedule, Silas had developed a rhythm. Wake up. Check for new rashes or unexplained nosebleeds. None so far. Swallow the vitamins Revec insisted on without asking what they were. Then submit to the daily brain scan that felt increasingly like being grilled by a sentient microwave. The scan room lights were always too bright. The walls buzzed faintly in the same key as a hangover, and Revec, true to form, never offered small talk. As he settled onto the inclined chair, she adjusted the neural collar at his temples. You didn't sleep well, she said, watching the readings adjust. Your delta wave count dropped. You try sleeping after a dozen aliens ask if your dreams are multidimensional. Are they? They're mostly about my 7th grade math teacher yelling at me in binary. She didn't react. He was beginning to think she might be allergic to humor. The scan lasted 12 minutes. She didn't speak again until it ended. Your neural markers are stabilizing. The residual memory compression is fading. So the maze didn't turn me into a mutant? No signs of mutation. But your occipital lobe isn't reverting entirely to baseline, he rubbed his temple. Meaning, your visual processing has become more efficient, it's likely temporary, he sat up. Define efficient, you're seeing more, faster. I've always been good with details. Not like this. You're tracking micro-movements subconsciously. Your eyes are compensating for spatial shifts before you're consciously aware of them. He blinked. So I'm a walking security camera, closer to a predictive observer. Well, that's terrifying. Still expressionless, she handed him a protein bar. It was blue and smelled faintly of mint and vinegar. He sniffed it. You're sure this is food? It has amino chains. Don't overthink it. He took a bite and immediately regretted it. It had the texture of wet chalk and the aftertaste of regret. Revek didn't notice or didn't care. She was already cross-referencing readings on her tablet. Any dizziness? She asked. No, distorted time perception. Only when I'm listening to you explain things. She tapped her screen without looking up. You're recovering faster than projected. I will submit the final report by end of cycle. Great. Then I can go back to being irrelevant, she paused. You're not irrelevant, he looked up. Was that a compliment? No, she said. It's a diagnosis. Later that evening, he was back in the mechanic bay replacing a cracked coolant seal on an atmospheric regulator. His hands moved quickly, efficiently, and he realized halfway through that he hadn't looked down once. His brain had already mapped the entire assembly in 3 dimensions, running 15-second predictions on pressure shifts. He paused, staring at his own fingers. Okay, that's new. The door hissed open behind him. He didn't turn. Unless you're bringing pizza or a replacement for my central nervous system, come back tomorrow. It is I, said Vek's voice. Silas exhaled. You're not what I just asked for. Vek stepped into the bay, holding something in both hands. It was a small, translucent cube. Inside, a suspended model of the maze rotated slowly, each layer shifting independently like a Rubik's Cube designed by a sadist. I replicated this from archival records, Vek said. I would like you to verify its accuracy. Silas wiped his hands. Is that a toy or a passive-aggressive reminder I'm still under a microscope? I do not understand passive aggression. It is a poor communication strategy. Welcome to humanity. He took the cube, turning it over. The internal architecture pulsed faintly with light. As he rotated it, the paths rearranged. His eyes traced the routes automatically. After a few seconds, he tapped one of the corners. That chamber's angle is wrong, he said. It should branch northeast-southwest, not east-west. Vek adjusted a dial. The model shifted. Silas nodded. That's better. Vek looked genuinely puzzled. You are not using any calculation tools. Nope, you are relying on memory. Not exactly. It's like, my brain cached the whole thing, but only the useful parts. Like how you remember where the light switches are in your house, even in the dark. Vek stared at the cube. May I ask a personal question? He said. Against my better judgment, sure. Why did you continue through the maze after the first loop? You could have exited. Silas leaned against the counter, rubbing his hands together. Because I got mad. Mad? Yeah, not at the maze, at the idea that I was supposed to fail. That the whole thing was a setup to confirm that humans don't measure up. I didn't like the feeling of being pre-written. Vek considered this. You refused to fulfill the expectation. Something like that. A long silence followed. Then Vek said, I no longer believe the maze is a valid metric. Silas blinked. That's a big thing for you to admit. I reviewed the raw data from over 300 trials. All failed not due to lack of intelligence, but due to the maze antagonism toward predictability. That is not a test. It is a confrontation. Silas handed back the model. Then maybe it's time to stop calling it a test. The final scan was scheduled 3 days later. Revek met him outside the med bay holding a sealed envelope. What's that? He asked. Your results, in hard copy. Because I was informed your species still values tactile records. I also value chairs that don't hum like bees and food that doesn't taste like fluoride, but here we are. She handed it over. You're clear. No permanent changes. Your cognitive readings are stabilizing near the upper threshold of human norms. You have full clearance to resume your duties without oversight. He raised an eyebrow. That's it. No ceremony, no congratulations, you survived a psychotropic geometry trap. She glanced at him. Would you like a sticker? He laughed. I think I'm good. They stood in silence a moment, then Revek said, I was wrong about your species. That's fair, so was I. She tilted her head. About what? I thought I was just a mechanic. The next cycle, the maze was retired from the curriculum and replaced with a new simulation designed to evaluate collaborative problem-solving rather than individual endurance. Silas was asked to review the design. He declined, citing a sudden allergy to anything with shifting walls. Vec returned the model cube to the archives, noting in the log, obsolete as of this cycle, retained for historical study. Silas went back to fixing things. He slept better. The dreams stopped. And when he walked the long corridors of the station, other students nodded at him, not out of awe anymore, but recognition. He liked that better.